Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show episode. Where are we at now? 9 on June 13th, 2020. We got a special guest today. We're starting off the show a little differently. Jay, I'm going to pass it over to you if you want to introduce who we have today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We're super excited today to talk high school basketball recruiting with one of the top prospects in the state of Texas. He's out of Allen High School. He's a 6'6" wing with a 6'10" wingspan, by the way. He also gets it done in the classroom. Last I saw, he had a 3.7 GPA, and he helped lead the Allen Eagles to their first outright district championship in 28 years while achieving District 9 6A first-team honors after his junior season. Our guest at this time, ladies and gentlemen, is Ian Mota. Ian, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been probably a recruiting season like no other. I wanted to ask you first, what has it been like, to be recruited for college basketball at all? And then how did that change as the pandemic came about?
Right. Well, it's a lot of fun. First of all, because like anybody getting recruited, we work really hard to get to this point, and so it's a lot of fun. With the pandemic and everything, most of it has been like watching film. Like we're sending a lot of film because nobody can see us in person. So it's different because going into those games last year, I didn't think that college coaches would be watching that and evaluating me on those games. So I was just out there doing my thing, having fun, playing hard, whatever. But I didn't think like, oh, this is what I'm getting recruited based off. So I'm just glad, I played hard and did my thing. So, but it's weird, and hopefully there's going to be live periods. But yeah, it's been a little bit different.
Ian, have you had any chances to, I guess, continue to stay fresh physically? Basketball is a little different than some other sports in terms of, the work that you can get in away from the team and stuff like that. But have you been able to do anything, getting in the gym, working with any teammates, anything to kind of stay sharp during all this?
Yeah. So my AAU team, we've been doing like challenges with each other, and we've been doing like workout challenges and competing against each other to basically stay fit and find a way to compete. And so lately, like the past 3 or 4 weeks, the gyms have kind of reopened. So we've been, getting back in and doing our thing. But yeah, during like the heat of the pandemic, when everything was shut down, we were pretty active because we were staying in touch on like GroupMe and sending each other our workouts and staying active that way. So yeah, we've been busy.
Good. That's great.
So when you started off this process, had you been recruited? Had you been in contact with any coaches prior to the pandemic starting?
Yes, I had, but ironically, my recruitment has picked up during the pandemic. So yeah, I was, but at the same time, it's picked up since the pandemic. So yeah.
Well, it sounds like that game tape that you put out last year did you some good if your recruitment's picked up. So it sounds like that's paying off for you. I know some of your teammates are also being recruited as well. You guys have a lot of talent on that team. So as teammates, are there ways that you support each other during your recruitments, and how does that work for you guys?
Well, yeah, a lot of it's on social media. So like when somebody has an achievement, somebody gets an offer, or somebody does something, we try to like also get their name out there and try to retweet or repost their stuff. And if anybody needs help, then we try to help them out because we all understand we're in the same position trying to get recruiting. So we want the best for each other. So yeah, we definitely do help each other, but most of it comes on the court, helping each other on the court, because eventually, that's the real work. That's what pays off. So yeah.
Well, we wanted to get into a little bit about your offers that you've gotten. I know the first night that you and I chatted to sort of see about doing this, I think you'd actually received an offer that day, but you hadn't announced it yet. So where are you now in terms of your offers? Where are you in terms of your offers?
Well, I post all my offers on Twitter. So I have 5 offers so far. And I have one from Air Force, one from UNC Wilmington, one from Iona College, one from Rice, and then another one from Navy. I just got a couple of days ago. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at.
What's your Twitter handle, Ian?
Ian S. Mota.
IANSMOTTA, right?
That's it, yeah.
Excellent,
Well,
excellent.
yeah, we'll put that on the show description there. We'll make sure that's tagged in there. So if anybody wants to follow Ian and follow his recruitment along. On that note about the offers that you received, this is always kind of something I've been fascinated in, whether it's basketball, football, recruiting, anything like that. There's this saying of, coaches kind of encourage this, like you want to commit to the school and not to the coach kind of thing. When I see Iona and I hear the name Rick Pitino, does that kind of change things a little bit? I mean, Rick Pitino and his he's a legend in basketball. Does that kind of change that dynamic of looking at a coach versus looking at a program? Or
Well, Coach Pitino is, I mean, like you said, he's a legend. He's a great coach. So I guess it does because, a coach is ultimately the one that builds the program. So, I mean, him being there, it just, I'm sure it's going to change the culture of Iona College. And they had a great program before, but I think Coach Pitino's, I'm excited to see what he does. And so, yeah.
interesting.
I think yeah, it's going to be a big time thing for him to be there. So.
And to kind of piggyback off that, like, how does that feel as a player? A coach like Pitino saying like, "Hey, I want you to come play for me." Like, how does that feel as a player?
Well, I mean, it's exciting, obviously, to have someone like that believe in you. It's exciting. It's a great opportunity, but I was on the Zoom call with him, and it was pretty crazy because, like you said, he is a legend. So, but I mean, it is what it is. It's cool, but I can't, freak out too much about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, and so how does that work when any coach, obviously all this stuff has been on a Zoom conference or a telecom, whatever it is, over the phone or on a video chat. So how does that get set up? Does somebody from the university reach out to you? Does somebody from the coaching staff reach out to you? How does that stuff get set up?
Yeah. So usually you'll be in contact with the assistant coaches, and they'll be texting you and hitting you up and stuff like that. And sometimes they'll just say, "Hey, I want to, get on a Zoom call. Would you be able to?" And schedule time with your parents or whatever. And they'll just hop on a Zoom call. And yeah, and I'm not gonna lie. The first time I was on a Zoom call, I was pretty nervous. Because I was like, I don't know how to do all the talking stuff, but I feel like I've gotten more comfortable with it, during this whole process. So it's good.
I guess
Definitely seems like that. Go ahead, Kerry.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna. I guess in terms of we talk about this in the pandemic, with everything going on. Is there kind of a scheduling that's going to be happening with these programs that have offered in terms of getting on campus visits, seeing facilities, getting to see the campus, all that stuff? Is that something that I guess how does that work before National Signing Day? Because I mean, obviously you want to see the campus and want to see the facilities and stuff like that before you sign, right? Or is that that's a
Yeah. So most players, it really depends. Some players will commit without a visiting. Some players want to visit and then commit. But it really just depends on the player. I personally don't have a preference. It's really just whenever I find the school that's right for me. But obviously it would be nice to visit, and it's really just when everything opens up and the NCAA allows it. So.
right.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, that's one of those things right now. Everybody is sort of in a holding pattern. Whether it's a senior or a junior like yourself that's about to go into his senior year, or that senior that graduated that's trying to make that transition to the college game. So everybody's sort of in that holding pattern right now, and everybody's learning on the fly. So it sounds like you're handling it pretty well. When these coaches have talked to you, and they've obviously seen a lot of your film, and they've taken the time to look into you, have they talked to you about things that they'd like you to work on? Are there any things that you just specifically would like to work on your senior season?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of the times they don't say like what you need to work on. They'll ask you and they'll say, hey, what do you think you need to work on? And they'll try to understand what you think. And most of the time, like I'll ask them, like, now that you've seen me play and you've evaluated my game, like, where do I need to be better? How can I improve so that when I get to college and potentially play for you, what can I do to be ready? And so I think the main things for me is becoming a better, well-rounded defender. And also, you know, being able to pass the ball and get my teammates involved, because a lot of my game last year was when I catch the ball, I'm gonna go score, because that was like my role as a player. But this year I want to kind of expand and learn how to get my teammates involved and move the ball and get my assists better than my turnovers. And so yeah, that's those two areas, defense and sharing the ball. Those are big for me. And also ball handling. I've been working on that, but that's just a simple thing.
Have you been asked to handle the ball much, like bring the ball up? Are you mostly on the wing? You talked about your role earlier. What would you say your role is on the team right now?
Last year it was to get out and run and then find ways to score. And then I think this year's, you know, I'll probably have the ball in my hands more. So, you know, I'll definitely have to be able to handle the ball in transition and face presses and get through that. But I'm confident that I'll be prepared to do that. So.
Do you think that's an interesting point you bring up about kind of looking for feedback from coaches about what you can improve on? Do you feel like that's I think there's kind of a misconception a little bit, whether it's football or basketball, any sport recruiting, about kind of like, oh, well, these are just, you know, super talented kids that, you know, just going to take their talents and go without, like, they think that they already know everything and how to play. That doesn't seem to be the case amongst you and your teammates, right? Like, that's kind of it seems like yourself, and you hear it a little more once you actually talk to some recruits and stuff about looking to improve, get some feedback from coaches. And does that seem to be the case that you've seen amongst your teammates and other recruits, this need or want to become better players?
Definitely. I think it's the biggest deal. It's the biggest thing for any athlete. I mean, how can I improve? Because a lot of the times it's an uncomfortable topic to bring up to a college coach, because, you know, you want to look good and you want to be like, hey, you know, I want to impress you and I don't want to show my weaknesses.
Right.
But I mean, they already know. They can see right through you once they watch you. So there's really no point in trying to hide anything. So I mean, I think it's a great person to ask, you know, because they're looking right through you and they can see, you know, all your game, and they've been doing this for years and years. And so I think it's great, and I think it's a great opinion. Any college coach, you can ask, hey, how can I improve? And they'll tell you what you need to improve on. It's a great way to learn and to grow as a basketball player. And I actually got that advice from my AAU coach. He was like, make sure that whenever you talk to a college coach and they see you play and they evaluate you, make sure if you get the chance to talk to them, make sure you ask them, like, hey, what can I do to be better? And I think that's helped me a lot since my recruitment has sort of picked up. And because like months ago when I first started getting recruited, I would ask those questions, and now months later I've improved on those things. So it's a great question to ask, and you know, it's important, definitely.
That's fantastic. I love that. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, Ian, and I'm sure from when you mentioned earlier how you all like to hype each other up, you're all each other's biggest fans. And does it work the same way in terms of pushing each other in practice and wanting each other to get better? Do you push yourself the same way on the court as you do, you know, lifting each other up off the court?
Definitely. But there's a lot of things that come with that. Like, you know, you have to build trust with your teammates first before you start doing that, because you don't want to be a teammate that, you know, goes out there and starts yelling at your teammates and you freak them out, because, you know, then they're like, oh, they start judging you. You want to, like, be their friend and understand them and get to know them, and then you can say, hey, you need to improve on this, or if they're the type of person where you can just yell at them, you know, and they'll pick it up and understand. But it's different with every guy, and it really depends on the team. Some teams are very, each individual players like want to get what they want to get and do their thing. And so other teams, like I'm blessed, like my teams that I'm on, it's like a very like tight group, and we all address each other's weaknesses and make sure like, hey, you messed up, like get it right, let's go pick it up. But at the same time, we're supporting each other, and we know that we want what's best for each other, so we're not gonna like try to ruin each other, I guess, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's great.
That's
so what
fantastic.
would you be doing right now, Ian, if everything was up and running? Like, what you mentioned AAU earlier, would you be in the middle of playing AAU ball right now, or what would you be doing in terms of this time of year?
Yes, we would be playing AAU, and we'd be traveling and going to live periods and playing in tournaments and doing all this different stuff. So yeah, we'd be traveling a lot and playing tournaments and trying to get our names out there and stuff like that. So yep.
So one thing I'm curious about, and I always kind of have heard this question asked of recruits, like is there a dream program you're waiting to hear from, or that you may have already heard from them? Is there a specific program that you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but just, is there one that's always stood out to you that you would, if they essentially offered, that you're locked in?
No, I can't say it. Any program that reaches out, it's a great opportunity. There's a lot of great programs out there, and there's a lot of great dream schools, but to say one, I mean, it's not fair, because every school is so different, and every school has great individual benefits, and some are completely different from another. And, it's just so many different reasons that you might want to choose one school over another. So it's hard to say one school, unless it's like, you just like that school for the name or whatever. But I mean, every school is different. So I can't really say I have a dream school exactly.
Yeah, good man. I like that answer a lot. Something else I saw from you from your Twitter page last night. Tell me a little bit about the Underrated tour and sort of what that experience was like for you, and then the aftermath from that.
Right. So the Underrated tour was a lot of fun. I went to the first camp. So there's 3 camps. So there's the first one, and I think so. There's 4 or 5 stops, I think, and it's north, south, east, and west in the U.S. And so at each stop, I think there's 75 guys that at each camp, or 75 girls and 75 guys. But I mean, obviously I'm a guy, so 75 guys, and then basically there's 2 days at the first camp. And so if you make it to the second day, you got to play hard and do your thing, and if they find you good enough, then they'll move you to the second day, which they only invite 30 guys back to the second day. And then, out of those 30 guys, there's the top 8. And if you play hard and you do your thing and you make it to the top 8, then you get to go to San Francisco and play in the Bay Area at the second stop of the Underrated tour. And so I was lucky enough to be invited there. And obviously with everything going on, the virus or whatever, it got postponed. And so hopefully we'll be able to do it. I don't know when, they haven't said anything, but yeah, so there's 8. And then once you go to San Francisco, and then, so like, that's like 20, 30 guys or whatever in San Francisco. And then if you're the top guy from there, you go to the Steph Curry Elite Camp, which is in the Bay also. And that's like it's like a very small camp with a bunch of great talented players from all over the nation. So
yeah, I saw Steph tweeted at you. What's that like?
It was crazy when I first saw it. I was like, there's no way I'm on Steph Curry's. I first saw it on Instagram. There was a picture of me on Steph Curry's Instagram, and I was like, oh my god. It was like, whoa. And so
Do you have to make sure it was like it wasn't like a troll account or like a fake account or something? Like, this is the real Steph Curry.
Yeah,
That's like,
It wasn't Stephen Curry. It was Stephen
Yeah.
Curry, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I saw it on my mentions, and I saw the blue check, and I was like, whoa, like, no way. And like, if you look at the post, there's like, I think there's like 1 million views on this, and it's like, that's 1 million people that saw my face. Like, that's a lot,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it was crazy, yeah.
That's cool,
Man, that's
man.
awesome. That's so cool. That's good stuff.
Have you done any more of those sort of camps, or before that one? I mean, have there any other camps that you've attended that have stood out to you in terms of, you've been able to get some eyes on you?
I've been to a couple small camps, just in the DFW area, but I mean, nothing like that. That was like my first like camp that like really stands out, you know? So yeah.
Nice. Well, Ian, this has been great. I want to pepper you with a couple of like quick, like, sort of the first thing that comes to your head. We'll ask you 3 questions, and we'll call this little thing your 3 favorites. Okay. So the first thing, what's your favorite song to get hyped to?
Big Papa by Biggie. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
I like Biggie. Yeah.
Great stuff. Awesome. What's your favorite class in school right now, aside from anything sports related?
I say English. I like English. Yeah, it's cool.
Lastly, what's your favorite, if you have time to, what's a favorite extracurricular outside of basketball?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I like to go swimming. I mean, I'm not like a competitive swimmer, but yeah, I like swimming. That's my thing.
Excellent. Well, you definitely have the swimmer's body, and a basketball player's one as well. Ian, this was a pleasure to talk to you today, man. We really, really had a good time with this, learning a lot about you, about the process, about being recruited, and you did a great job, man. So thanks for stopping by and spending some time with us today on the show, and maybe we can do it again down the road.
Got you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Ian. Best of luck, and yeah, we'll definitely be following along. And like Jay said, hopefully we can get you back on. Hopefully, once this thing starts opening up, and you guys are actually able to get out and play some ball. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right, well,
thanks a lot, Ian.
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks for
it,
having
man.
me.
Have a good one. All right.
Yeah, you too. See ya.
See you, man.
Welcome back, everybody. Wonderful segment there with Ian. Jay, thanks for facilitating that and getting that going. I'm fascinated to see how the rest of the year plays out for him, and especially with the pandemic and everything. It's just fascinating to watch this play out. He really is part of this. It's kind of a unique, and we could have spent all day asking him questions about what it's like just being a student in high school dealing with a pandemic and all these different things. But guy's got big things in front of him. That was great. Thanks for getting that going, Jay.
That was an amazing interview. I really enjoyed hearing from his perspective, but also, he did a really great job of laying it out real clear for us. And anybody that maybe doesn't even follow basketball recruiting, this is just such a unique experience for the players and the recruits. So getting to hear that sort of thing was amazing. And he did a great job. So Ian, thanks again for coming on, and hopefully we can get him on again down the road.
For sure. So let's, last couple of weeks have been a little bit out of our kind of our typical format, but we'll kind of bring that back in here and get recentered, and let's get into the cup of coffee. Jay, it's been an interesting week over on the 40 acres. The University of Texas has had not only a pandemic to deal with, at least in terms of the university and athletic department and the players and all those things, but as we discussed last week, the murder of George Floyd has had a massive effect on people at the university, namely, and the student athletes, most of which at the university are Black. So there's been some interesting news that has come out. Brennan Eagles announcing via social media I think this was maybe about a week ago. It wasn't too long after the George Floyd news hit, basically saying, unless things change, I'll never play another snap for the University of Texas. Not so much as because of, so much about Texas, but more talking about um, societal issues.
Yeah,
The
just
other night,
taking a stand.
yeah, exactly. And Anthony Cook, the other night on social media, kind of saying the same thing. It wasn't so much of the typed out statement over why, but Anthony Cook basically coming out and saying, I'm not playing football again. And it has nothing to do with Texas or anybody or anything involved. I'm just not playing football again. I think a lot of people were wondering what was going on there. You know, obviously it's his personal business, it's his personal decision and those kinds of things. But the next day, a number of Texas athletes in a coordinated, unified effort release a statement with, uh, you know, it's not just a list of demands, but there's also some background and history and the reasoning for this. And it's very fat, and I recommend anybody go and read it. And um, but essentially saying what they want to see from the University of Texas going forward to make the university and the athletic department more inclusive for athletes of color, whether they're Black, Hispanic, anybody, but to make it a more inclusive place. Jay, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, this is a lot of. I think these athletes are realizing now more than ever that this is the time to use their voice and their platform. People always say, well, you play at the biggest university or one of the biggest, I guess, the biggest names. You can go anywhere in the world and see Longhorn gear, man. There's a reason why the Longhorns are the #1 revenue program. It's because everybody knows who the Longhorns are, and everybody knows that logo. And when you have these athletes now that understand the moment in time that we're living in, and understanding that they have a platform right now that they can use to better not only their immediate surroundings at their own university, but to set the tone for others to do the same. I think it's brave to take some of these stands that some of these players are taking, because they're getting backlash from certain people. But I think it's awesome. I think it should be continued until they get some of the things that they want. I don't believe, Kerry, that they're going to get all of the things that they've asked for. I don't believe that every single one of those boxes will be checked. But I think, especially in their eyes, in terms of their demands, that some of their needs will be met. And I think that will be a step in the right direction.
Yeah. The two of us attended the university. I think, we're fans of the university. We're fans of the athletic department. I can speak for myself. I mean, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of what they did yesterday. The whole "what starts here changes the world" means something. I mean, I know it's a slogan and it's all that, but it means something. And I think that them really taking that to heart and using their platform, which Tom Herman and Chris Del Conte have encouraged, by the way. This I have a hard time thinking that this coordinated effort amongst the athletes was not, I don't want to say passed by, that makes it seem like the coaches approved it, but, like they had to have some kind of say in it. But I have a hard time thinking that Tom Herman wasn't aware of this, and he's encouraged his athletes to take this position. And I'm proud of them for doing it. And like you said, I don't think that they're going to get, we can go down all the bullet points of that, but I think some will be more difficult than others, namely the eyes of Texas, but and the mentioning behind that. But I think after seeing what DeAndre Hopkins and Deshaun Watson what they were able to do this past week with getting the Honors College at Clemson renamed in a matter of days, them putting it out on social media and essentially saying, here, this needs to be done. I think it's a good thing. I think it's I'm proud of them for doing it. I'm glad they're using their voice.
It's necessary. There will never be, at least we have to treat this time like there will never be another opportunity like this to continue to say the right things and to do the right things and to set the right example for everybody to follow. And these players are really putting themselves out there. Like I said, I do think it's brave, but it's also the right thing to do in my eyes. And I am also very proud of the fact that the University of Texas is attached to something like this, where it's really in terms of just the whole student athlete, the whole group of a university coming together, and for the University of Texas to really be out in the forefront of this, using their voice. I'm proud of that. I think it's great, and I'm really anxious to see what comes from it, because like I said earlier, I do think that some of the demands that they made will be met.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we'll continue this conversation next week as things continue to develop. I'm sure we'll have more updates on this for next week's episode. But let's continue on through the cup of coffee here. Let's on that same vein, in the continued fallout from the murder of George Floyd. Another interesting thing that happened this week was NASCAR has decided to ban the Confederate flag from races and remove their requirement for teams to stand during the national anthem. Holy shit. That's a monumental move by NASCAR.
Well, when I asked our friend Randy Rodeo what he thought was a bigger deal, was it Roger Goodell saying Black Lives Matter or NASCAR banning Confederate flags? I don't think it was close for him. He told us that it was the Confederate flag being removed from everything that has to do with NASCAR. And I got to say, I tend to agree with him.
Yeah.
This is one of those things where it took something like this. It took something like the murder of George Floyd and the civil unrest and the protests and everybody using their voices, all of those things that happened. It took something like this for it to happen, but it's the right move. I'm happy that they did it. They've obviously, or I would assume that they've probably alienated a lot of their, I don't know if alienated is the right word, but there are a lot of NASCAR fans that are not happy about this. And to be honest, I don't really care if they're not happy about it, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and it reminds me, it reminds me of the backlash during the Kaepernick controversy from a few years ago of, well, I'm never going to watch football again if he kneels on the sideline. And it's the same thing like with NASCAR. I'm never going to watch NASCAR again if they ban the Confederate flag. You almost have to ask yourself, like, then why were you watching or going in the first place?
Right.
Yeah, like, so it kind of it makes you think about it a little bit of like, that's going to be what it is to drive you away from like your favorite sport or whatever you identify as culturally with as your sport and what you do on the weekends. If that is what pushes you away from it, really?
Right. And NASCAR attendance is always, NASCAR events are always, you got 100,000 people at those races, every single race. They sell out. People watch it on TV. The sponsorship money is through the roof. Like, those are so many people. And it's the same situation with football, whether it's concussions, whether it was Colin Kaepernick, whether it, the things that people have always said, well, I'm just not going to watch that anymore. And the NFL is stronger than ever. NASCAR is stronger than ever. And they may take a momentary dip in the interim for whatever reason, but NASCAR will come back from this, and they may gain people from this. Like, okay, now I can associate myself with something like this because something like the Confederate flag isn't attached to it. You may be able to bring more eyes to your screen just because of this. So
sure.
Again, companies are making decisions with their pocketbooks right now. I think people would be foolish to think that these businesses haven't investigated this and said, we have no choice as a business but to do this. This is the best choice for us. So regardless of, NASCAR has been, held over the coals before for this and nothing happened. The fact that they took this step to ban the Confederate flag from their races and their properties, I'm impressed that they actually went through with it, and we'll see how it is enforced as fans are allowed to come back to races. But it's the right move, so it was a good job.
Well, and interestingly, so that wasn't the only bit of NASCAR that was in the news this week. Bubba Wallace, who you follow this a little closer than I do. Is he the only African American driver in NASCAR right now?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so I couldn't remember if there was more from a few years ago, but it was
No, right now
basically
he's it.
yeah. So basically, this move for him to change the paint scheme on his car is pretty symbolic, no? If you want to go into some detail about what he did.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it was just the on the hood. If you watch NASCAR or you're familiar with NASCAR, the main sponsor usually goes right on the hood of the car. I'm not 100% sure if he was having trouble finding a sponsor for this race or if he just chose not to have a sponsor. However, it was like the interlocking arms from a black person and a white person, and that was what was on the hood of the car. The message that it sends, this isn't a me thing, this is a we thing. We need to come together to get through this. We need to help lift each other up, help each other find ways to be better people and to love each other. And I think that sent a really strong message. I mean, when you're the only black driver in NASCAR and you see those Confederate flags flying around and you're like, I can't speak for Bubba Wallace, but I gotta feel like, man, you look up and you're like, man, that's really something. Now let me go drive my car.
It's a feeling I can just imagine, like a feeling like, what the hell am I doing here?
He's obviously talented enough to be there.
Yeah, but it's obviously again, I can't put myself in his shoes, but it's
Right.
to know what that feeling is. But
No.
this is what I love to do, and I'm just never going to be welcome.
Yeah. In 2020, he was having to deal with that.
So as we mentioned, NASCAR, one of the things that they changed, in addition to the Confederate flag ban, was the requirement for teams to stand during the national anthem. U.S. Soccer made a similar repeal this week. I know this kind of flew under the radar when it happened, but the women's team kind of had a different experience from this, right? With Megan Rapinoe, and just all the wonderful outspoken members of the women's national team that kneel during anthems and all those things. U.S. Soccer stepped in and basically tried to put an end to that. They basically put it in the rule books that you had to stand during the anthem. And they've gone back on that. And do you have any thoughts on that? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, these federations are taking the steps that they need to take. It's easy to see what you need to do here, and companies are just having to make these decisions. It's the right call. I mean, if the NFL says they're going to do it, I think that's sort of in terms of the biggest name of saying nobody's going to be able to kneel. I think all the rest of these leagues are starting to, and federations are starting to follow suit and just understand, like, we're going to have to do this, or we're going to get hammered until we don't, or until we do. And so, I mean, I don't want to give U.S. Soccer Federation too much credit here, but I mean,
No.
but it is the right move. Again, it is the right move. They got out in front of this. I shouldn't say they got out in front of this. They made it happen when they needed to make it happen, at least. And again, it's just like NASCAR making the decision. It's the right call at the right time.
Yeah. Now they just need to sort out that paying the women's team what they're worth, but that's for another episode.
We could spend a whole lot of time on that one, but yeah, that's another topic, and maybe we should.
We should. Because that was in the news again fairly recently with another court decision, but we will get to that. Continuing on through the cup of coffee here, you mentioned Goodell in the NFL. There's been calls for him to essentially repair the relationship with Colin Kaepernick in the league. I mean, I'm curious about this, and this could end up being a deeper conversation here. What could Goodell in his power really do? I mean, I guess in a way he cannot force a club or franchise to sign him, right? I mean, what can he do? Is this just basically just some kind of symbolic gesture of, like, it's okay to sign him, some kind of memo or something he needs to put out? Because if no teams want to sign him, because again, like we mentioned before, Goodell saying Black Lives Matter in the video that he put out, as huge as that was, the real change isn't going to come around until the Jerry Joneses of the world are on the same train.
Who's been
And
absolutely silent, by the way.
absolutely silent. And that's where I'm kind of like, okay, well, the league and Goodell can repair this relationship, or seemingly try to repair this relationship, but they cannot force a franchise to sign him. So
No.
what can the league do? What can Goodell and the league do to actually, try to repair what may not be able to be repaired? But what can they do?
You and I discussed this on the show a few weeks ago, how effectively his playing career is over. I don't think Colin Kaepernick at this point is an NFL quarterback. There have been quarterbacks that have been signed off the street, that have been Josh Johnson, I believe. He was on the street for 4 or 5 years, and some team brought him back a couple of years ago. So I'm not saying that it's not possible for a quarterback, and we all know that Kaepernick's been training. He looks great. He's still the the athlete that he was. He's 31, I believe now, though. But you do have that he hasn't taken the wear and tear from playing those 4 seasons during what should have been the prime of his career. So, no, you can't make any team sign him, like you said. But I do think Roger Goodell has to say Colin Kaepernick's name.
They have to address it.
He has to say Colin Kaepernick's name, and it wouldn't hurt for it to be near the words, "I'm sorry, we're sorry, the league is sorry for the way that we specifically." He'll never, they attacked him. That's not what Goodell would say. That's not what a league statement would say. But along those lines of saying, the league prevented you from, or attempted to prevent you from spreading the message that you wanted to get across peacefully, and we were wrong for that. We're sorry. At this point, I really think that's the only way to mend this bridge. And it would be, at that point, it'd be up to Colin Kaepernick to say if he wanted to accept it or not. I think he would. Because I
agree.
But
I agree.
I think that's the only step here, because he's an electric athlete. I just think his playing days are over.
Well, another electric athlete was involved in this video that we just mentioned about Goodell responding to the video that was put together, Michael Thomas, and that facilitated it and everything. But Patrick Mahomes, probably the most electric player, him and Lamar Jackson in the NFL, was kind of, that we've now a week on have kind of found that Mahomes appearing in that video was kind of what tipped the scales, that really kind of forced Goodell and the NFL to address this video. For those that don't remember, it was the one basically saying, we demand the NFL say that Black Lives Matter. We demand that the NFL apologize for silencing their peaceful protests years ago. And then Goodell coming back out within 24 hours with the video, answering everything that they wanted from that video. But Mahomes' involvement was kind of the big deal. I guess he was, the league viewed him as the guy, and he's the MVP, the
Right.
superstar in the league, and to have him present in that video was huge, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we already knew that, but like to see it kind of addressed by the league, I think is interesting.
Well, he's the dude. Yeah, like that was the report that I read earlier in the week, was that like basically Mahomes, in the eyes of Roger Goodell and the league office, like Mahomes is the guy. He is the guy to carry the league into the next generation. So in terms of all of those big names that were on there, and there were a lot of them, the fact that
Huge.
Mahomes was there seems to be, like you said, that watershed moment of the league realizing we don't have a choice. We
Right.
have no choice but to do this. And the response was swift, and we did give the league credit for that response and the things that they absolutely said. But again, if Mahomes isn't in there, if the dude, isn't in that video, maybe they don't take it as seriously. I would hope that they would, but the fact that he was there was absolutely that, okay, we got to do it. Let's get on it. So that it's obvious the league values star power, as they should. Like a league is only as good as its star power, and Patrick Mahomes' Q rating is just off the charts. Everybody knows who that guy is, and everybody loves that guy. So,
Yeah, you don't want your moneymakers unhappy.
No, well,
And that's what Patrick
not it.
Mahomes is. He is one of the prime moneymakers for the National Football League in terms of people tuning in to watch games,
Yeah,
jersey sales, all
merch.
those things.
Yeah,
Huge.
yeah,
So, well, that's a good cup of coffee there.
yeah.
Let's transition over into our Pandemic Weekly segment.
we we haven't named it. It's too depressing.
It's as cases surge again here in Texas, and people calling it a second wave. I think the first wave didn't really end, so we're still, everything's ramping back up as restaurants were open to 75% yesterday.
Yeah, I only laugh to keep from crying, man. You know that's the deal.
Yep.
It's just
Yep,
one of
that's
those
where we're
deals.
at.
But
So let's
well, yeah,
hit
go
through
ahead.
some of these bullets here on the pandemic stuff. We have a lot of updates. Uh, NFL basically released a memo on, and you can clarify this for me. Is this for camp? Is this for team like OTAs? How is this? What is this memo that the NFL released?
It was what the necessary steps teams are going to have to take in order to allow players into their facilities. So it was all of those boxes that they would have to check. Like obviously physical distancing protocols, moving around furniture to to create lanes and not to have people right next to each other. The signs discouraging handshakes is a specific thing on there that I thought was interesting because it's one of those things. You're in the locker room, everybody daps each other up when you walk by. You got 100 guys, doing their stuff, and like I guess maybe they need to be reminded not to touch hands.
I'm sure that'll be adhered to and
Right.
enforced.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just like players staying 6 feet apart all the time. They have to make the locker rooms to where the lockers are 6 feet apart. I'm sure they're just going to stay in their little bubble in their chair and never move outside of that. Right.
Well, this gives Mike Leach a great opportunity to revamp the air raid spread offense. I mean, hey, space everybody out 6 feet on the field at least.
Love it. I love it, man. He would do it too because he's crazy, and I would watch him do it. And he might do it. He might bring these. Since where he is now, he's going to bring some stuff to that conference that they haven't seen. They haven't seen it, so he may do it. But I love Leach. What a guy.
Oh, I can't wait. When we get closer to college football season and start doing
guy.
conference previews and stuff, when we start getting into the SEC West, that's going to be one of probably the more fascinating shows that we'll ever do. Yeah, just for the coaching personalities.
Well, I say what a guy, not from a sense that I would follow him into anywhere, but just the content that he brings for somebody that likes to talk about sports. That's why I appreciate Mike Leach, definitely, him and his pirate fascination.
Amongst other things.
Amongst other things, right. But yeah, man, I mean, this is the NFL is making an awful lot of asks from their teams here to get this stuff set up. And I don't know if it's window dressing just to say, hey, we put it out there, man. So, and like you said, how enforceable it's going to be, or how enforced it will be. But there's cameras everywhere, like people are going to see if two guys are walking out of the locker room goofing off and, hitting each other and like I don't know, like you said, if it's enforceable. So
yeah, I think, and as we get into, as we start talking about these various sports coming back to whether it's coming back into camp, we talked about the NHL's training camp that they're shooting for in mid-July to restart their season. And it's getting close to NFL training camp time. I think the only thing, the NBA, we talked about the NBA and their plan. I think the only thing, we talk about enforcement and actually trying to keep these things is positive tests. I mean, if players for teams continue to keep getting tested positive for COVID, that's really the only thing I feel that's going to truly change any behavior. And I don't want to put it on just the players saying like, this is the only thing that's going to make the players take it seriously. I think it's the only thing that keeps anybody in the general public taking this thing seriously. And that's where it's, as long as people are getting tested positive, it's still a threat. And I think once, these guys get to the locker room and they all take their COVID tests and 5-6 players come back positive, they're going to go, whoa,
Well, that's what just happened at
Okay.
U of H. That's what just happened at U of H, right? And they had to, they've shut things down because of that it's, 5 or 6, whatever it was, positive tests. These are things that UT, I think, what did they have? Two positive tests?
Two positives, one symptomatic and one asymptomatic. So the
And
symptomatic player is being monitored, and the asymptomatic players in isolation. Yeah,
which,
it's
if you
stuff
think
like
about
that
it,
that's going to change behavior.
it's pretty impressive, I think, that there were only 2 athletes out of all of those numbers that are back on campus. Like that, there were only 2, and one of them was asymptomatic. I mean, what I mean by that is I'm more surprised, I guess, that
Yeah.
of the percentage of people that there are at least more asymptomatic people on campus, which
Right.
is great. I'm glad there's not. That's a good thing. But U of H has already encountered what you were describing, and they've shut it down. So
Yeah, and I think Oklahoma State had 5 positive tests, something along those lines. I think Alabama had a few. I mean, but that's the thing. I think, the players are going to show up to camp and go, okay, this is going to be business as usual. We're going to do what we've normally done. But it's not going to be until those first rounds and second rounds of test and those things where players continue to test positive, where they go, look, if we want to get paid to have a football season, we
right.
gotta, adhere to these guidelines, as kind of ridiculous as they might be. But the league wants to have whatever league it is, they want to have a season.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is they're not doing this stuff because college football isn't, or colleges aren't bringing football players back because they don't plan on playing in September.
Right.
So we're still a long way away from this thing being over. And I hope that, the thing with the NBA, the NBA positive test and shutting the league down was the first thing in this country that really got people to say, oh shit, like it's here. And hopefully with sports leagues continuing to be sort of that thing that people follow to, okay, college football, they had to shut down another program because of this. They had to shut down another program because of this. And I hope that this keeps it in the front of people's minds that we are still in the middle of a freaking pandemic. Like this is not over, everybody. So I'm glad that there is an availability to test these kids. I'm glad there's an availability to test the staff and have all of that information there. It's just I don't think we're ready for people to be back on campus, but they're there, so they're dealing with it like this, and we'll see where it goes in terms of if anything ramps up.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. We always talk about sports being a reflection of society, and that's really going to be the case throughout all this.
Absolutely.
We're going to kind of bounce through these here a little bit, just out of interest of time. But moving on from the NFL, MLS has announced they're going to have their MLS Is Back summer tournament. This is not a part of the We're Back segment, but the MLS Is Back summer tournament that's going to be in Orlando, and it's essentially that's great that Florida was able to eradicate the virus so quickly from the state.
Yeah.
So that congratulations to them. They conquered it.
Yeah.
But it's
no kidding. What a
state. Texas has done much better, but it's
that's true. Yeah. Probably worse.
But they're basically going to be having a World Cup style tournament to determine regular season spots catching up for the season. When that is done, it's going to determine a Champions League spot for the winner. There's also a over $1 million cash prize that's going to go to the winning club. Kind of a cool concept. And then then the regular season would then finish out the way it was originally scheduled. We'll see if it gets to that. And then the playoffs and the champion's going to be awarded as usual. We mentioned this about the NHL. This is the MLS has said that this is their broadcast are going to feature experimental technologies, including interactive fan elements to try to, engage viewers. So that'll be interesting to see. And then, kind of how that works out in the TV broadcast and trying to get some new eyes on the game.
Well, and I'm not, I can't say that I've watched a ton of MLS, but, outside of, when like there's going to be a Ibrahimovic on, or, some of those bigger names, I don't really follow MLS a ton, but if I'm getting the special camera angles and interviews with the coaches during the game and the special features that give me that little bit more of inside information, that might draw me to watch a few of these matches and to get that experience, and maybe to, obviously Austin FC is coming on here real soon. So I'm not looking for a team to support because I'll latch on to them once they get rolling, but I could learn some of these players. So if I do start to follow Austin FC, then there's that recognition factor there.
Exactly. I think us in Austin have an interesting perspective on this tournament as a way to kind of, really immerse into MLS the season before Austin FC kicks off. This is a great opportunity to watch these teams in a condensed kind of environment like a World Cup. And now you're familiar with everybody. You're familiar with the players and you move on. And, you already have built-in dislike for whoever that Austin FC faces next season. So,
yeah. It's not
so
enough
moving
to
on.
root for somebody, man. It's not enough to root for somebody. You got to hate people too.
Yeah, exactly. That's as that thing gets closer, we could talk about some teams to maybe look at. I'm kind of eyeing Inter Miami as a potential team to latch onto into this tournament. I know I've got a Houston Dynamo scarf back there, but hey, Austin FC, I gotta try to, represent for the new home team and what's going to be a rival.
Well, and for me, since obviously I hadn't paid any attention anyway recently, so I think the idea, obviously, with MLS would be to get as many eyes on this as possible for a common fan like me, or what's the word I'm looking for here? Like when you're just getting into something or whatever. That's
you're just a general fan. Just a general fan.
This is not the We're Back segment, Kerry. So we'll get back to that later, though.
General fan will make an appearance in football season, I'm sure.
Yeah, he definitely will. But my point is like, let's say Inter Miami is a team that's fun to watch here, and then Austin FC comes in, and I latch onto a couple of teams that I like to follow. There's nothing wrong with that as a fan,
No.
I mean, obviously, like I want Austin FC to win, but to be able to follow some other teams and to really invest a little bit more in a league that there may be some changes coming, and it may improve the quality of football that we see. So I'm looking forward to it, man, and I think it's a great opportunity for MLS. We'll see if they capitalize.
Absolutely. Let's see, Jay, you want to go into a little bit about an NBA update? I know we had talked about them having the Disney thing going on. Is there any update on the NBA front?
Just briefly, there was a big, like an 80-player Zoom call led by Kyrie Irving. There were some WNBA players on it as well, like 3 or 4 from what people were able to gather. But basically, Kyrie Irving was like, man, maybe I don't feel like going and playing down there right now with everything that's going on between the response to George Floyd's murder and obviously the pandemic. He goes, maybe this isn't the right time for us to be doing this, and maybe I don't want to. Let's talk about the pros and cons here. And basically, what came from that was, hold on a second. Can you hear that?
A little bit, but you're fine. I can hear you better.
All right, good. So basically, 80 players. Not saying they were all in that same mindset that Kyrie Irving was in, but basically there were some star players that responded after that said, well, we want to play. So there are points here to be had, but we want to play this season. So if you don't want to play, that's fine. And I do know that the league and the Players Association are working on something right now that would allow players to be able to totally skip the rest of this season without penalty, with no second questions. If you decide this is not for you, they want there to be an out for that, because it's forcing somebody to play in the situations. To me that would be a little outlandish anyway, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's the fair thing to do. I mean, even besides looking at like the liability aspect of it, right? I mean, that's just you don't want to force somebody to be present and force somebody to play, and then they catch the virus, and then they're held responsible. Which we can be cynical about the NBA's motivations on that, but like I think it's the right and fair thing to do. If a player wants to opt out, they can opt out. There shouldn't be any penalty for that.
No, I'm with you. And then real quick, we'll hit on baseball. They're not any closer. The newest date that I've seen to start the season is July 14th. You've got you've got Timmy Kirkjian, who's a respected reporter and insider for the game of baseball, that has said on a podcast he's leaning more and more towards the fact that there might not be a season. But then you have the commissioner coming out and say, no, 100%, we're playing baseball in 2020. It's just like, well, I want to believe that, but they're still so far apart on money right now that I don't know how this is going to happen, man.
Yeah, each day that goes by, I'm more and more like Kirkjian, convinced that there's not going to be a season. I mean, here we are, it's June 13th, and they're saying July 14th to start the season. Really? There's no way that's going to happen.
No.
They're going to have to bring players back to do some kind of like spring training type. I just don't see it happening. I just don't.
You have to play some exhibition games. Like there's so much that has to happen in a month. There's not a chance that if they told everybody today that it starts on the 14th, then you still have to get everybody there. You have to test every single person. You have to isolate those that test positive. There has to be the incubation period before you can even start playing. There has to be, there's just so many factors here, and we're getting farther and farther into the summer, man. And it's just, unless they're playing baseball into November, which I know they don't want to do, to me, I just don't see this being a season. I don't think it's going to happen. And to me, that's one of those things where, sometimes I heard 89 games and then 72 games and then 76 games and 117 games. And how are you going to fit any amount of games without extreme amounts of doubleheaders, without giving hardly any breaks to players throughout the year in between games? I just don't see this.
No,
it's becoming less and less feasible.
No, and this is not like, baseball is a sport that doesn't run on a clock, right?
Right.
So we're not talking about the NHL's plan to have 2 hub cities and basically run tournament style games to finish out, to do the seeding and then the eventual playoffs, or the NBA's tournament style that they're wanting to do in Orlando, or MLS's World Cup style tournament where you can schedule 3 games every day. You can't really do that.
I love that, by the way. I meant to say that I'm absolutely fascinated by that, and I can't wait to see that. I think
and they're all set on a set schedule, just like with the World Cup. Every day what time a match is going to be on, and it's
fantastic.
I'm thrilled for that. But baseball's got a problem here. The NHL is still sorting out what their hub cities are going to be. Actually, I think it was announced today. I think Las Vegas is officially one, which we had talked about that ending up being a favorite. But baseball they haven't even got to the point of whether they're going to play or not, where these leagues are still, they're still talking about the NHL, not the playoff games, not actually starting till late July or maybe even August.
Right.
Baseball's saying they're going to start back July 14th without any idea of where they're going to play or how they're going to do this. To me is just absurd. And I think this is going to get, I guess I'll ask this real quick of you. What is kind of the breakpoint deadline on this to where they just say, we can't do it? Is it in August where they go, what's the point of even having the season? Because then we're going to have to go into the winter. Like where does baseball finally say it's done, bring everybody back next spring, and let's try to have a 2021 season?
I think if there's not a plan in place by the end of June, it's over. By June?
You think by the end of June, that's it?
I'm not saying obviously they're not going to be back by then, like we talked about. But
no, for sure.
To have a plan in place, I think in the next 2 weeks something has to happen, because if you're getting into the beginning of July, there's going to have to be a month before everything really gets started. So you're starting games in August. If you're playing, let's say you play 60 games. You're playing every day, and you're playing double headers, and you're still traveling. And they're still going to have to, unless they're able to find ways, like you said, for these hub cities to just knock them out, But it's so difficult to do that because, like you said, the lack of a clock. Baseball games can take, with Zach Greinke's pitching, they can take 2 hours and 5 minutes. And when, Joe Blow's pitching, it could take 5 hours and 45 minutes. So it's like, it's so hard to do that. It's going to be impossible to make this happen, I think, if there's not a plan.
And you have rainouts if you're playing in an outdoor situation. There's just too much. And
one positive test on a club, what are you going to do? You have to shut it all down? This is like the line that we're walking on here is so fine. And everything has to line up perfectly for all of this stuff to work. And it's just, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah,
at
and
this
we're
point.
both baseball fans, and I think we'd prefer baseball over not. But I almost feel like it's probably it almost feels like it's maybe just better to not have a season at this point instead of trying to force the square peg into a round hole and trying to force some mutant form of a baseball season that
Yeah.
may get started, and then like you said, one positive case and the players union is going to step in and go pull the plug,
Let's say,
as they
you know, this,
should, and
they
finish it that
absolutely
way.
should. But, you know, how about this, Kerry? How about this for a crazy idea? You whatever you want to do, you have to make sure that the season is over by September 30. The end of September 30th. September 30th is the last day of the season. So let's say that they can get something going on and they are back by mid-July. What if you played every single team one time? What if they just did a round robin and you played every single team one time, and it was almost like that round robin type of a deal where everybody, every soccer team plays in, every soccer team once a season. I know logistically that might be a freaking nightmare, but if you have enough time to do it and you can, or maybe you just do it by league. Maybe you only play everybody in your league, in the American League or the National League, or maybe maybe it's a World Cup type deal where you only play teams in your division. And then what comes out of that is the playoffs. Like, they've got to be able to they're going to have to come up with an idea like that because if they do come back, baseball fans are already going to be so pissed off that it hasn't come back yet. I mean, we're in a pandemic. People are going to watch baseball. I guess it won't matter, but they're making people mad right now by fighting over these millions of dollars, and it's not a good look.
No, it's not. And like we've talked about on here before, I don't know how much faith we have in the people that run baseball to come up with a creative idea like that, something groundbreaking that would attract eyeballs and get people involved. Yeah, it's frustrating. We'll see how this plays out. I think you're probably right that by the end of June, if there's not a plan in place, but that just seems like it's so close, and but we'll see. Well, let's move on a little bit. This week, the English Premier League is returning in the next couple days. Arsenal on June 17th. So what is that? That puts us at Wednesday, right? Wednesday's reopening
Right.
day of the Premier League. Arsenal are headed to Man City. Yeah, welcome back, Premier League.
No kidding. Yeah.
What a way to go, to be welcome back is going up to City. We'll probably get into this more next week. By that time, Arsenal will have played the City match, and then they play Brighton Saturday. We'll get more into kind of what the expectations are and where Arsenal can make up some ground and try to get back into this thing. Title race is over. Liverpool will probably wrap it up by the time we have a show next week. But we'll get into that. They're a game back, or they have a game in hand, and are essentially, what are we looking at here? They're 5 points back of the top five. It's a tight race. Arsenal are currently sitting in ninth, and the teams directly behind them, Burnley and Crystal Palace, are only 1 point back of them. So really, spots 5 through 10 are completely up for grabs. But we'll get into that more and kind of what we predict and what our expectations are for Mikel Arteta finishing out his first half season as Arsenal manager. But interesting note on that, for the opening round of fixtures, Arsenal have, as well as other clubs, I think the entire Premier League is getting involved in this. But for the opening round of fixtures, we'll have Black Lives Matter on their shirts instead of names on the back of the jerseys. Arsenal's Hector Bellerin was one of the kind of people that helped lead this charge.
That's my captain and your captain. That's our captain.
He is our captain, the people's captain. And
That's right.
I know he's not officially the club captain, but he sure has been acting like this from the start of the pandemic, whether it was negotiating the reduction in player wages, which turns out Arsenal were the only club to actually have done that, to reduce player wages in order to keep club staff and everybody employed. So good on him, good on the club for getting that done. But he's been out in front of all these things, and it's interesting to see him, continue to be an outspoken voice that doesn't have to be. So it's encouraging to see.
Well, I know he has a podcast too, and a lot of the conversations that he's had recently have revolved around everything that's going on after the murder of George Floyd and all of the aftermath. He's been very topical on that, very hands-on, willing to learn and willing to have people on to have discussions. And like I said, he's our captain, whether or not he has the armband or not. He sure acts like it. And when you talk about the type of company that he's keeping with some of the other captains in this league, when you have Liverpool's captain Jordan Henderson, Seamus Coleman at Everton, those are the type of names that are associated with this movement and have really pushed for Black Lives Matter to be on the back of the kits rather than their last names. And like you said, that's going to happen for the entire first week of fixtures, I believe. So for Hector to step up like that and to be that sort of leader that Arsenal have been lacking really, and he started to fill that role very, very nicely as sort of the spokesman, the face, if you will, of this club. I'm pretty proud.
Hold on.
I'm pretty proud that he's been able to take those steps and grow as a leader, and also that Arsenal is represented that well. So, no, it's great. And all this is happening. You talked about Arsenal taking pay cuts, the players. This Premier League clubs are going to lose a lot of money here, just like any other.
Oh yeah.
Just like any other, team, professional sports team will during this time. I mean, we're talking £1 billion, which for us over here across the pond is about $1.26 billion that clubs are going to lose during all of this, estimated. So I know that the Premier League is excited to get games back on, to get eyes back on their product, and there aren't many better ways to start than Man City Arsenal match. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, we'll get into the kind of preview of what they've got coming.
Yeah.
But after the Man City match, there is a pretty doable list of fixtures that Arsenal can actually get on a run here, and I think it's going to be interesting to see. They've had plenty of time to prepare, and we'll see. But yeah, it's not an easy first match.
Well, hey, you got a prediction for the match?
I'm gonna go 2-1 City.
I'm going to say 1-1. I'll say it's a draw.
I'm gonna go 2-1 City. I think I still don't have faith in the defense. I think. Yeah. But I think the fact that there won't be fans in the stadium, I don't think City's going to kind of lose that home advantage a little bit, and I think
unless they do the 2K pipe-in music stuff.
Yeah, they'll figure something out. But it's but yeah, I'm not going to predict an Arsenal draw on the road quite yet. But I think they're going to be more competitive than they were when City visited Arsenal, which was, eventually led to the hiring of Mikel Arteta. It was such an awful match. So I think they're going to be more competitive. I think there'll be improvement. I just don't know if I'm ready to pick them to get a point out of it.
Last thing on Arsenal, I'm so excited to see, because we all know that Arteta, technically, tactically, I think we trust him a lot, but we also trust his ability to mold his players, to talk to his players, to coach up his players, and to create a locker room setting that Arsenal maybe haven't had recently. And even without being able to have the guys there, I think Arteta just continuously being that calming voice, that person, that just beacon of leadership that he's become. I'm really looking forward to see how Arsenal comes out of this pandemic, and if they just take off like you and I thought they were already sort of taking the steps in terms of making that progress for Arteta as manager. But, how will they respond to this, and will they really come together as a team and look like a bunch of players that are coached by Mikel Arteta?
Yeah, I mean, the work that having video meetings with players, the film breakdowns, everything that I've heard, everything that he's done during this pandemic has been incredible in terms of the work that he's been putting in for scouting and player preparedness and all these things. So it's going to be fascinating to see how they come out. It's just, I wish they had a little bit better of a, kind of introduction to getting back to actually live, meaningful matches. But maybe that's the best way to do it. Hey, here you go. Here it is. It's like the, football, college football games early in the season. It's kind of like, one hand, you get the entire offseason to kind of scout and prepare for that. And that's kind of what this is. They've had months to basically plan to go up and get a point or 3 from City. And if they do it, then here we go. So
yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Well, I know there was a lot of stuff. We're going to get into the breakfast wrap here. I know a lot of these things we've hit on, we could spend a lot of time on. I know today we're kind of a tight show, but it's let's go ahead and move into the breakfast wrap. Jay, what do you got?
Yeah, so first thing there, LaMarcus Aldrige out for the season, went ahead and had shoulder surgery. The Spurs are 4 games behind Memphis right now for the 8th seed. The string of playoff appearances is likely over for the Spurs. But, I think people need to really, aside from his outspokenness politically and speaking up for what's right, I think Greg Popovich needs to get more run nationally as being one of the greatest coaches to ever coach this game.
Yeah.
Just, as it seems to sort of be wrapping up this 20 or so years of straight 50 wins and playoffs and this extremely rarefied run that he's made, Pop to me should, I think he should be considered more in that conversation of the greatest coaches to ever coach basketball.
Yeah, it's if he was coaching in New York or LA or the Celtics or something, it'd be a no. In my mind, it's a no-brainer. I think we were on the same page on that.
Yeah.
I mean, but we also, our proximity to San Antonio and the success of the Spurs over the last 3 decades nearly,
Yeah.
is really impressive. And I think he's been the constant throughout that. And I think he'll get his recognition. But also just from his, just being an outspoken, he's more than just, we talk about Bill Belichick, there's no question about his place in history in football. But in terms of, his being an outspoken advocate for his players and, for society, and it's really awesome to have not just Greg Popovich, but also like Steve Kerr and these, amazing coaches, but also just great humans as well that are, not afraid to speak their minds and stand up for people.
Well, and hopefully, Kerr was a good player, great 3-point shooter in his career, won some rings with Jordan and the Bulls. Obviously has coached the Warriors and done really well there. But, coaches like Kerr and Popovich, I hope they remember it just as much for their outspokenness on issues and being able to really have a voice for not only their players, but for the betterment of society. And I think that the league is better for having those 2 coaches there. And I think just in general, our country, anybody that has eyes on that game, to get a chance to be – because, they're giving you an education when they talk. These guys are smart, they're well thought out, and they're coming from a good place. So that's something that the NBA should really be thankful for, that they have these guys there.
Yeah, completely agree. Legends in their own right, not just in the basketball sense, but they'll definitely be remembered fondly, I think. But last thing in the breakfast wrap here, 10 years have gone by, and USC has welcomed back Reggie Bush back into the fold. That was an NCAA mandated 10-year break.
Right.
To where they I guess couldn't officially associate or something of that sort, to where, you had, if for those that don't remember the whole Reggie Bush scandal about receiving money for a house for his family in San Diego or something of that sort. It was just, NCAA sports, but he got knocked on it. Heisman was vacated that year, which
you shouldn't have wanted anyway, but
should have gone to Vince anyway. But it's but neither here nor there. But it's but
the
USC's
thing is,
now.
Kerry, is he gave that trophy back too. He physically gave that trophy back. You would have had to come to my house and take that trophy from me, because I'm not giving you back my Heisman trophy. I'm sorry. And I mean, maybe he'll get it back now. Maybe there'll be something. Well, because there's disassociation with the school is over, maybe I know it was vacated in terms of by the Heisman, but man, come on, you're telling me that I'm not saying that he should have won it that year, but you're telling me that I'm supposed to that there just wasn't a Heisman Trophy. We just vacated that. You're like, I'm not supposed to pretend like that happened. The same when like you vacate championships and stuff. No, those championships happened. Those awards were given. Whether or not they were legitimate is another question, or if that player at the time was eligible to receive that award. But you gave it to him, man. Like I'm sorry, that was just a little rant on the sort of the rewriting of the books, but
no, well, I think it's a perfect point to get to where our next little point in the breakfast wrap about Zion Williamson, and that the attitudes that have changed regarding the public viewing these NCAA scandals. You know, when this Reggie Bush thing dropped years and years ago, it was huge. It was like, oh, their USC was cheating. Reggie Bush got paid. Oh, vacate the national title. I think that 04 national title got vacated. The Heisman Trophy was vacated. But then the Zion Williamson lawsuit comes out. Essentially, the short version of it is that he's being accused of being paid. Right? That's essentially the short version. That Duke provided money for a home, and his parents got some cars.
Yeah,
improper benefits.
Right.
And nobody seems to care. I don't.
No.
I don't care. I mean, we've talked about this before on previous shows about the NCAA. They're a toothless organization that has really no enforcement, ability. And that's where your point about who's going to come and get that, come and get the Heisman.
Right.
The NCAA didn't award that Heisman.
Right.
The NCAA didn't award the national championship to USC. They don't award a national championship in football.
Right.
At that time, the bowl championship series did. Yeah,
was that the NCAA Division I football championship that I somehow didn't know about? No, that doesn't exist. Yeah, like you said, it's toothless. I think, like you said, I don't understand that stuff. I mean, I get the decision. I understand, like, if they said, well, we did it because of this, fine. But don't tell me that it didn't happen. I watched it.
We all watched it. All watched it. And that's what, obviously we were happy the way that Texas beat the greatest team of all time in that Rose Bowl, that 05 season. But
was sweet.
We all watched what USC was for those years.
Yeah.
Which is also why when Texas made that Rose Bowl against them, we're like, all right, here we go.
Here we are. Yep, here we go. For sure, man.
Like we all saw it. And that's where, to go back, I don't know if this was last week. This might have been last week's show when you asked me about the enforcement on Oklahoma State and what could happen to Kansas as part of the penalization for everything that's gone on there.
Yeah.
The NCAA is inconsistent. They're toothless, and I have no faith in them whatsoever to be able to, adequately, I don't even want to say like hand down punishment, because should that even be their job to begin with? But
there's nothing for me to elaborate on that last statement. That's nobody trusts them. There's nothing else for me to say there. Nobody trusts them. They shouldn't. So we'll see what comes from this, man. But I mean, like, Zion's already in the league.
Yeah. What are they going to do?
Is Duke going to get punished for the 1 year that Zion Williamson played school and, made them millions and millions of dollars because of who he was? And whatever,
yeah,
man.
Duke, you should send that money back to Nike. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And just like Kansas, we'll see how Duke gets treated.
Yeah.
If and when anything comes out from this, because the NCAA has been oddly quiet, and it's just been this lawsuit that's out there. There haven't been any comments or investigations for that, I don't believe, from the NCAA on this. So, whatever. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, I'm with you. Nobody trusts the NCAA, and they shouldn't. So.
Well, that's a good breakfast wrap. We'll wrap that baby up, and man, it's a good show. I think let's wrap this thing up, man.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks
Good
again
stuff
to Ian
today.
for coming on. Yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for Ian Mota to come on. Look him up. His Twitter is at IANSMOTTA, at Ian S. Mota. And so look him up there, give him a follow. That's where you'll be able to track his progress, all the offers that he's making. And I'm sure we'll try to reach out to him again as his recruitment continues. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And thanks again, Jay, for bringing him on. That was excellent. Well,
yeah,
all right, man. Well, another one in the books. Let's do it again next week.
we'll do it again next week. We love you guys. Thanks for listening. Black Lives Matter.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.
ATX representing. Fatal, baby.
All in 06 on a Saturday. Can the